everybody. Welcome to the Change the World podcast. This is a podcast just centering on the idea of giving back and really changing the world through the desire to give. It's amazing that when you take a little bit of time and you take a little bit of your life resources and you give back, it can change the world. And so we're here at Matthew's house with Linda Paz and Dave Wescott, the owner of Evergreen Brands. And we're here just to talk about, changing the world. A little bit of how we've had the privilege of partnering today with Matthew's house. And we're excited to be here. So
we're excited to have you.
Yeah.
Absolutely excited to have you.
Linda, why don't you start us off by just telling us a little bit about Matthew House and your story here and what it is you do.
Well, I'll kind of go back a little bit in the beginning. I'm originally from New York, born and raised in New York, and oldest of 10 kids. 7 of them were foster children that my mom and dad took in. My dad was Air Force, my mother was British Army, and when she came after the bombing in London, she came to America and met my dad, so married. I grew up with working on the streets of New York with drug addicts and alcoholics and families that were in crisis and in need. Then we moved from Long Island out here to the West Coast, and I continued to work with an agency called Teen Challenge, which I had worked with in New York. And then when I graduated from college, I went to Los Angeles to work at the Teen Challenge down there. They were opening up a center for women and children, and I became the director down there. And at that time, I met a young man who had come through the program and was an ex-drug addict and had given his life to the Lord at that time, wanted to go in ministry, and we ended up getting married and pastored for 20 years, and then he passed away in 2003. I had 3 kids to feed and to take care of, and I became the director for the women's shelter at the Everett Gospel Mission for a number of years, and then somebody contacted me and said, hey, there's this agency in Monroe that's looking for an executive director. Why don't you try out for it? And I said, well, I don't really work with prison families. I work with women and children in crisis and that are, families that are struggling. And they said, well, that's what it's about. It's not about working at the prison. They work with families, and they're looking for an executive director. So I said, yeah, maybe I will. So I called up, made an appointment, and on Friday night, I met them in Mill Creek at the Presbyterian Church. And on Monday, I started here at Matthew House.
Wow.
And I've been here 20 years this October as executive director, and it was life-changing for me. It was totally a whole new field for me too. I had never, like I said, worked with prison families in my life. Didn't really totally understand the need at that time, but as I came here and started to meet families and find out what was going on, it changed my life. And I tell people I do what I love, and I love what I do for the last 20 years because it has made a huge impact on my own life when I realized what prison families go through, what the children go through. We are the only agency, according to the University of Washington, when they researched us, that does what we do for families. And it's been here since 1980. And since 1980, we added up one time how many services we had provided for families. And it's been over 1 million services we've provided for families since 1980.
Wow.
So it's an incredible, incredible ministry. It really is. And just love the people and the families, and the stories that we've heard in all those years are amazing. Absolutely amazing.
One of the things that we're shooting live here on location, so this is kind of cool. Normally we're in the studio, so you get the full raw view, and our team was out doing some volunteer work today. But before we got kicked off and before we started that volunteer work, you gave a little introduction.
Yeah.
It was powerful.
Thank
you were telling this story about, I actually think that it'd be best if you tell the story, but I'm sitting back there and it almost brings you to tears. I mean, you're sitting out there and you're listening to the story that she tells about how this impacts, not only how it impacts, the victims or the person who committed the crime, but how it is impacting the children and the spouses that are massive collateral damage. And I mean, I'm sitting out there and I literally had to put my head down because I mean, it was like so moving. And what you guys do here is so powerful. Is that a story that you can share?
Oh, yeah, I would love to. Like I said, Matthew House changed my life, and this is one of the things that, from the very beginning, changed my life totally. Like I said, I was the new director here, and Matthew House had been 9 months with nobody here, so there was a lot of needs. The food pantry was empty. The clothing room was a mess, and so like I said, my first week, I didn't know the community. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who was who. And so when they hired me, they told me there was no money. And so I thought that they meant there was enough for the first week, you know. And so when I'm going through all the books on my first day, and then I called the board president and I said, I can't find any money. And he goes, well, there isn't, and that's why we hired you. And I said, oh, well, I guess thank you for that vote of confidence. But so I had to immediately, first thing was come up with a plan. How do I raise money in a community I have never been in, not familiar with a ministry that is no money, no food. So I was working on that. And so I thought, I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of the stores, and there was a Safeway here. And I took a little 8.5 by 11 flyer, and I made up a flyer that said, you know, would you give us canned food? Found out later I couldn't do that, so I had to leave. But until I left, I'm standing there, and I had this young man come up holding the hand of a little boy around 7 years of age. And when he comes up to me, I handed him this flyer, said, hi, I'm the new executive director. I'm working with Matthew House. We're a prison family ministry. Would you be willing to give us some, you know, a couple canned food or something like that? I want to start to build up the pantry. Well, he looked at me and then just cussed me out. So some words I didn't even know. When I went home, I called my kids up and said, there's a couple words this man was swearing at me, and I don't even know what they are. And because, you know, I've been in ministry most of my life, and I didn't know what the words were. So my daughter goes, oh, Mom, don't say that word. He called you that. What was wrong? And I said, well, he was upset. And then when he got done yelling at me and I realized how angry he was, I'm thinking, well, is this how the community thinks about Matthew House? I mean, this is my first day on the job, you know?
Yeah, wow.
So, and I don't know, is this what I'm going to be facing coming in as the new executive director? So I looked at him and I said, excuse me, but I said, do you mind just telling me why you're so angry at Matthew House? What did they do to make you this upset? So he looks down at the little boy and he goes, this is my nephew. And then he swore again and he goes, and the blankety blank guy that killed his father is on the hill. And that's what they call the prison, because we're half a block from the prison up on the hill. And I said, oh, I am so sorry. And, you know, and I'm a grandmother, and I got down and I held the little boy and I just started to cry. I said, honey, I am so sorry what this man did to your dad. And I'm so glad that he is, you know, where he's at and going to pay for his crime. So I stood up and then I said to the gentleman, I said, you know, do you mind telling me what happened? And he started to tell me the story of what had happened with where the guy had died. And when he did, I said, wait a minute. I said, I think I heard that on the news or somewhere. I said, was that the two guys that left work and went into a bar and got a drink after work and the one guy was killed? And he goes, yes. And I said, well, if I remember correct from reading it or hearing it, there was another little boy in the other family, probably about the age of your nephew. And he goes, yeah. He said, I think there was. And then I said to him, you know, I said, I want to say something to you. I don't want an answer. I just want you to listen to me. And I said, think about this. That night, two dads get off of work or wherever they came from, nobody will ever know, went to this bar, had a couple drinks, got into a fight. Nobody will ever probably know what happened in the fight. It just, you know, I said they were thrown out of the bar, went out into the parking lot, and the one gentleman, your nephew's father, ended up getting killed. And I said, now, after that happened, I said it was late at night, if I remember, and both kids were probably in bed. But I said, in the morning when they wake up, your nephew's dad, who has passed away, the school's going to be there, counseling is going to be there, there's money for victims of violent crimes. I'm going to be there, the counselors are going to be there, everybody is going to be there to help your nephew. And thank God he has you and your wife that's there to help him and take care of him.
Yeah.
I said, but now when the other little boy wakes up, I said, think about this. He now finds out that his dad has just killed somebody. He's little, he doesn't know what's happened. The mom's not going to send them back to school. A lot of times in prison families, they move. They'll leave the area because of the shame and the guilt and the horrific crime that went on. And I said, so this little boy has nobody to support him. And usually a lot of prison families make a story up where their dad is. Where's your dad at? Oh, I had a lady tell me one time, I asked her, I said, where do you tell the kids the dad is? And she says, they think he's a long haul trucker and he hasn't been home for a couple of years. Another lady told me that her husband had been in service and had gotten out and then committed a crime and he was now in jail, and she told her kids he was back in service serving.
Wow.
And so families have to make up these stories because being in prison is a bad word.
Yeah.
And if your kids go to a slumber party or something at school and they say, what do your dads do? Oh, my dad's an attorney, my dad's a doctor, my dad's, this and that. What does your dad do? Oh, he's in prison for murdering somebody. He's not going to be invited back. No. They're not going to invite those kids back. In America, we say you're innocent until you're proven guilty of a crime, but that's not true of the family. In prison families, the whole family is made guilty, including the children.
Sure.
Now, the guy who committed the crime is up where he should be doing the time, but the family now, they carry the shame, the guilt, and everything. And so I shared this with this gentleman, and I said to him, don't say anything to me, just think about that. A little while later, he walked out of Safeway and handed me a bag with some cans in it. And then he handed me a $50 bill and he said, I never thought about the other family. I never thought about that other little boy, what he was going to go through in the morning. So he said, give this to that family. So I said, thank you. I said, I will make sure that it gets to the family or to somebody that knows the family. In fact, one time I was sharing at a church and kind of shared the same story. The next day, it was close to the holidays, and this was, months later. When I had been here a while, this gentleman walks in, very tall man, and he walks in and he said, I was at church last night when you shared that story about that little boy. And he said, I just retired as a police captain from the police force. And he goes, I always took pride in my job. And he said, as I should have. I was proud of what I had done all the years I had served. But he goes, when I heard you speak, he said, I got to thinking about how many times I saw those kids screaming and crying with their parents holding them or the moms holding them. And he goes, and we drove off, and he goes, I never once went back for one of those children. Never once. He said, I never thought about what the kids go through until I heard you speak last night. And he handed me $1,000 cash. And he goes, I want this to go to prison families.
Wow. Yeah.
And I said, thank you. I said, absolutely. I guarantee, I promise you with all my heart, it will go to prison families. So I tell people, if you understand that, you understand what Matthew House does. I will be there for the little boy whose dad got killed. I'll be there. I'll support them 100%, get them whatever I can to help them. But I'm also going to be there for that little boy whose dad committed the crime. Make sure they don't, that they get their needs, that they get the clothes, the food, the emotional support, the counseling, whatever we can help them to get the kids through that, so they don't end up in 18 years in an orange jumpsuit in prison, having followed the pattern that the parent had committed. So if you understand that, then you understand what Matthew House is and what we do.
Sure. Wow. Linda, that's powerful.
Powerful story.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you say how many people do you minister? And it's the families. So they're coming from all over the place, right?
We provide 20,000 services a year to families.
Wow.
We have apartments upstairs, 3 apartments, and we sleep about 2,000 women and children every year upstairs. And they come from Snohomish County, they come from King County, they come from Washington, they come from other states.
Yeah.
And we've had 14 people, families, moms, come in from other nations that have come in and stayed with us. Their kids come to America, a lot of them get on drugs, end up in prison. They're able to save up, get the plane ticket here, but when they get here, they don't know the area. They usually don't have enough money for the hotels, $90 to $120, $200 a night. They don't have the food, and they don't know any of them, and some of them don't even know the language very well.
Sure.
And so when they come to us, we provide all that. We make sure that their needs are taken care of. We explain the process of going into the prison. If you've never visited in prison, the first time you go, it's scary.
Sure.
First time I went in and the doors shut behind me, I've never had a panic attack in my life, but I did that day, honestly. I suddenly realized I'm in here with 2,800 men and that door just shut. And I'm 5'1", and and I'm a grandmother, and I'm like, oh, I'm not comfortable right now. So if you've
Right.
never done that,
Yeah.
and then if you're not dressed right and you don't have the right clothes and the trauma, so we're here to take all of that, walk them through
is
it, we
trauma
take them
going
by
in,
the hand.
too.
It is traumatizing
It
to a
is.
family.
It is. It
And
is tough.
to walk them through and everything like that,
Yeah.
the process. And it takes a while. Once they get used to the process, they're okay. But if
Yeah.
you've never done it,
Yeah.
and they'll tell us afterwards, you don't know what it's like to be able to come to Matthew House, sit down, have a cup of coffee, have some soup, because I put soup on every Monday. Every Monday I come in and make a big pot of soup, and it has become called, it's Grandma's homemade canned soup. Because everybody that donates food, I always say, give me a lot of soup, because I make soup on Monday, and so I make the soup, and it's homemade, Grandma's homemade canned soup.
That's great.
And so anybody going to the prison, anybody driving into the prison, even if you're not staying here, families can stop, they can grab coffee, we have the playground, they can come in, the kids can relax, they can breathe, you know. And,
Especially after driving for many hours.
Yeah,
you just need
drive
a.
in from Walla Walla
Yeah.
or Bellevue or something, or it's
Yeah.
snowing or it's rainy. We do get rain in Washington, by the way.
Once in a
Right,
while.
a lot of it.
And,
A lot of it.
yeah, so in the winter, and so these moms coming in, it's just to have a place to go to.
Yeah.
We don't judge them. There's no discrimination. We just love them, love on them, and say, what can we do to help you? What can we do to help you get through this process?
Yeah.
And and what can we do for the kids to make sure they're doing good in school, and make sure that you've got counseling for them. And
You get a lot of women that are to come back over and over again, right?
oh yeah, yeah. And we have some incredible stories of families that have come here. We've got one family who I just love with all my heart. They had 6 kids. Dad went in prison for he was in for I think 5 or 6 years, I don't remember exactly. And he got out, and his family was originally from Georgia.
Okay.
And he gave his life to Christ in prison, and he was doing wonderful. Well, they got out about 2 years ago, and his dad's retired, and him and his whole family are now in Georgia, and he's taking over his father's church when he retires.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we get stories like that all the time. It's amazing.
Wow.
But it's also amazing that a lot of people don't realize, not only do we help prison families, but there's crises that go on that you don't realize. One year, I had 3 families stop here whose kids were under 20 or in their 20s. All 3 of them had cancer, and all 3 of them passed away.
Oh my word.
And the one
Wow.
story that really touched my heart was one day, we're closed, used to be closed on Tuesday and Wednesday. Before COVID, we were closed on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we were open all weekend. So I would come in on my days off on Tuesday and Wednesday to do paperwork because we were
Yeah.
so busy. And I was closed, and there was a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and there's this beautiful young lady standing, and they're holding the hand of this little girl, beautiful little girl. And they were crying, both of them. So I opened the door, and I said, can I help you? She said, yeah, I was just up at the prison, and they said that I'm to come down and ask for Linda. Mom, they call me Mama Linda. Everybody calls me Mama Linda. I'm asking for Mama Linda, and she'll help me. And I said, that's me. And I said, how can I help you? And she says, well, my brother's in prison. He's, I think he was 28 years old, and he's dying of cancer. And she goes, are you a minister? I said, well, it just so happens, yes, I am. But I said, how can I help you? I said, do you want an apartment or something? She said, yes, I would love one. And she said, but would you pray that my mom gets in on time? And I said, on time for what? She goes, he's dying.
Oh my word.
And she said, she's flying in from Colorado, and they don't know how long they're going to live, and so the prison is giving us this extension to go in and see him. So I said, yeah. So I got her an apartment, got her set up. I got up in the morning, told her how to get to the prison, everything like that. And then I was back on Wednesday working, finishing up some work I was working on. There was a knock on the door, and it was this young lady, the little girl, and apparently, the grandmother. And they were all crying. So they came in, and I said, well, how are you guys doing? Did you get here on time for the visit? And the mom said to me, she said, I got in at midnight, and he died at 1.
Wow. And
I just started to cry, and I said, I am so sorry. And so she said, well, she said, I don't know what we had done if Matthew House hadn't have been here to take us in, to help us, to get us through this. And she said, would you pray with us? I said, absolutely. So I prayed with them and everything. And then she left, and I remember I sat there. I've got 3 kids. And I remember thinking, I don't know what I would do if one of my kids was in prison and had cancer and was dying, and I couldn't be with them. You know what I mean? The whole time kind of thing. thank God she got an hour with him before he passed away. And he was scheduled that spring to get out.
Wow.
And then they found the cancer, and it just went real fast. And I had 3 families that year that had kids in their 20s that died of cancer the same way. And thank God they got a little time with them. But as a parent, it's like, and those are things people don't understand if you've got somebody in prison.
Sure.
How that affects you.
Yeah.
You know, thank God. I mean, the prison's wonderful. It works with them and everything like that. But they're still not home with you.
Yeah.
Right.
When they pass away and stuff like that.
And a lot of times no closure.
No.
Yeah.
So
No closure for the kids, the spouse.
Exactly. So those are some of the things people don't see and don't understand behind the scenes
Yeah.
of the trauma
Well,
families
thank
go
the
through.
Lord that you are here at and helping these families. You know, I mean, it's amazing. 2,000 families, 2,000 nights here of people staying.
Yeah.
You know, all of those families having a resource. Linda, it's amazing. It's amazing that
it's just God.
Yeah.
It really is just God. And the thing is, I tell people, and I was telling the guys, doing the cameras and stuff, they're awesome. And I said to them, and I've said to the other volunteers, people say, oh, you're so awesome. And I said, I'm not. I don't do anything. I'm here. God has placed me here. I love them, and my heart's for them. But it's the volunteers. It's things you all do that make this happen. If people didn't donate, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
If groups like yourselves didn't come in and were able to help us with the work and
Because
stuff
it's all
that you
free
did
of charge
today.
to the families too,
Yeah,
right?
it's all free of charge. We don't charge for anything.
Yeah.
What's the biggest need? Like, as you've been here 20 years, things are changing. What's the biggest need? Like if you that you have here at Matthew House.
I hate to say this because it's probably every nonprofit would be the same thing. Of course, donations financially right now because of COVID. And like I said, I don't get grants from government and stuff like that. So when COVID hit, I took a hard hit financially. And then when the war in Ukraine happened, finances go down because people give to that, which they should. I give myself. So right now, probably my biggest thing right now is financial. And I'm a kind of person, I don't like talking about finances because God has been so good to us and always provided. But honestly, this year it's been finances. And it's just
how much do you need to raise?
Right now, I've been trying to raise about $5,000.
Okay.
So.
Well,
to get us through, at least
if you're out there and you want to help, MatthewHouse.org, right?
Yeah, MatthewHouseMonroe.org.
Monroe.org.
MatthewHouseMonroe.org.
Yeah, we'd love for you to be able to help.
Yeah, and the mailing address, it's Matthew House, P.O. Box 201, Monroe, Washington 98272.
Yeah.
And how much does it cost to run this place in a year? What does that look like for you guys?
Well, we used to have a budget of about $150,000.
Okay.
And the more finances that come in, the more staff I can have, which really helps us out.
Yeah.
So obviously with COVID and everything, I've had to let some of the staff go because our finances are down, which puts more, so there's very few of us working right now. But the board had talked to me and said, do you want to close down? I said, no. I said, if I have to do it for nothing, I still want to be here for families. I still want to be here. And I said, and I'm just trusting God, and I'm going to continue to trust God that He's going to provide for the needs here. So, because if it's just one family that comes in, or just 2 or 3 kids, they're not going to be here.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it open as long as I can, as long as God provides. We're going to be here to help these families.
Good.
That's my heart and my goal.
Good.
Yeah, that's amazing. The stories are so powerful. And this is what it's all about, changing lives.
Yeah.
Change life changes a life.
Yeah.
Right?
And I've had people, I shared earlier when I talked to you about that one time when they opened up the event center here in Everett, and they did we're giving out a raffle ticket, and whoever got the number got half the money, and the other half went to Matthew House, which was an incredible donation for us in the beginning. And this beautiful young woman came up to me, and very well dressed and everything, and she said, are you with Matthew House? I said, yeah. I said, actually, I'm the executive director. I said, how can I help you? And she said, well, I'm an attorney in Bellevue. And she said, I've got, I think, 4 or 5 other attorneys under me now. And she said, I grew up in Matthew House. And I said, you grew up in Matthew House? She said, every weekend. I remember my dad was in prison, and I remember my mom dragging us to Matthew House. And she goes, we would never have made it had it not been for Matthew House. The food, the clothes, the support. And she goes, that's why I'm an attorney today,
Wow.
because of Matthew House. And I hear that from a number of people that have said, when I go out and speak in different places, I grew up in Matthew House. I was there as a kid.
Wow.
Amazing.
So what can you do? You know, I'm thinking that's the thing about business. What can you do to help organizations like this? How do you plant yourself into the community? How do you make the community a better place? That's the question. And you know, for us, that's what we're committed to. You know, we have this crazy goal to put $100 million a year into organizations like Matthew House. And so that's what I think it's all about. That's the best part.
Yeah.
Because business is tough. And you know, my commitment to you is whatever you raise, I'm gonna match whatever you raise, because what you do is so good.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great.
Just messes me up thinking about it. All those kids.
Yeah. That's good,
Thank you.
Dave.
So
You know-
that's our commitment, because we're all about giving back.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
raise $100 grand, we'll match $100 grand. You put 150 grand, we'll match 150 grand. Because that's what business
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
is all about.
Yeah.
It's so touching.
Thanks, Dave.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank
Dave.
you. There's
Yeah,
not
you know-
there's not enough words to say thank you.
Yeah.
Sincerely.
One of the things that we've done is we've created an organization called Enbridge, and Enbridge is out of TransBlue and Evergreen Brands, and its very purpose is to give back. And so, you know, Dave has put his money where his mouth is, and he has taken his business and he's put it on the line, and he's given back, and that's why we're here today. That's
Yeah.
why his
Thank
team
you.
was here today.
Yeah, awesome.
That's why, you know, we had 25 employees here painting and doing yard work. Encourage you guys, if you're out there, to consider giving to Matthew's House. And you know what? Now it's a 2-for-1. Every dollar
Yeah.
you give to
Yeah,
Matthew's
thank you.
House, man, we're gonna match. So it goes twice as far. So we would love for you to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You can do that through Enbridge.global, and just put Enbridge.global 100%. We'll go straight to Matthew's House, and we'll put a link there for you to be able to do that. It'll be up by tomorrow, and yeah, why not?
Thank you.
Let's do it.
Life
Let's see if we
be
can do it.
tough.
Thank
Life can be so tough.
Yeah.
And sometimes
You're
that
right.
little help, a
Makes the
million
difference, yeah.
people, you said that you guys were able to help over the last 20 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, you know, business is tough. We lose contracts every so often.
Yeah.
Sometimes people quit working, you know, and going through supply chain issues, you know, customers who sometimes don't understand supply chain issues and blast you on the internet, or, you know, there's not a lot of understanding in this world. And so being able to give and help makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because it's not about
does.
making one person a bunch of money. It's about changing the world.
Right.
That's what we're all about. That's what our whole goal, our whole mission. That's the reason why I have the business, to be perfectly honest. It's not to do a bunch of jobs, because at the end of the day, no one's going to remember one thing I build. No one's going to remember it. But the lives we change, the seeds we plant, that's what's important.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
changing
You're right.
lives.
You're right.
Planting
Absolutely.
seeds.
And that's what I love about this. Thank you so much for listening in. Help Matthew's House
Thank you.
any way that you can. Matthew House. I got to get the S off the end of that. Ralph keeps telling
Everybody
me.
keeps putting the S on it.
Yeah,
Matthew
House.
Monroe.
I'm Dave Wescott, CEO of Evergreen Brands. Follow me on LinkedIn, David Wescott. Hit me up, take a look, and give back.
Yeah.
Make an impact in your community.
Yeah.
Change the world, no matter what it is. What are you passionate about?
Yeah.
What do you have? What is there? Are you passionate about the homeless? Are you passionate about food banks? Are you passionate about, you know, addiction? We all know somebody who's addicted. We
it's
all
true.
know somebody who's affected by alcoholism. How can you give back? How can you change the world? In a world that's
Yeah.
so divided, in a world that's so separated, no matter what side of anything that you're on, we can all work to change the world and make the better place. It's been an honor to speak with you today.
Oh, thank you.
for
I'm
allowing
honored.
us to be
It's
here.
my honor to be with you. Such
Yeah.
incredible people.
Thank you, Linda.
Seriously. all of you.
It's awesome. Thank you so
There's
much.
not enough words to say how incredible all of you are. Seriously.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Thanks, Linda.
Check us out next week. We'll be back. Have a
God
great
bless.
afternoon.
Bye-bye.